Well, this is a very fascinating topic, I think, especially in the case of India. As the world's largest democracy, we're going to talk about how you can make democracy work in the community. So I think this is a very, it is indeed the building block of decision-making and of well-being. And I've tried to summarize what we're going to talk about with the title of Participatory Budgeting, a process to produce better local governance in public investment. Let me begin with a simple definition. Participatory budgeting is a decision-making process through which citizens deliberate and negotiate over the distribution of public resources. And in some cases, we've experimented on the issue of actually revenue, not just expenditures. And participatory budgeting programs are implemented at the behest of government, citizens, non-governmental organizations, and civil society organizations to allow citizens to play a direct role in deciding how and where resources should be spent. This is indeed the great tension of participatory direct democracy and representative democracy. And this is the transformation that has gone on in many local governments in Brazil and in Latin America and elsewhere, of recognizing that some aspects of democracy need to be directly participatory and not representative. We'll talk about the key attributes, improving state performance and enabling the quality of democracy. It helps improve state performance through institutional rules that constrain and check the prerogatives of municipal government, while creating increased opportunities for citizens to engage in public policy debates. It also helps enhance the quality of democracy, encouraging the direct participation of citizens in open and public debates, which helps increase their knowledge of public affairs. It's creating true citizens. The history, as many of you may know, I think this is an old topic that must be perhaps thousands of years old. But contemporarily, it's traced back to recent experiences in the city of Porto Alegre in Brazil, a city with whom I worked closely for many years. I was there in the precursor to the social forum that they run now routinely. Tell a short story. I was with the mayor, and they had a very interesting inaugural session. And in that forum, they greeted all of the participants in a way that really defined a very open attitude of government, including the World Bank at the time with the Workers' Party. So it was a really extraordinary outreach of confidence that they made and that was made during the beginning of this process. They have a small book that was published. We actually translated the book and printed 15,000 copies. It was written by the Workers' Party. It wasn't the party in power, but they had the right ideas. So I think you de-link the ideology with the actual value of ideas, and that makes a difference. The Workers' Party took over in 1988 in Brazil, and they basically had a premise. Its campaign was inversion of spending priorities, basically making expenditures progressive. The poor that need more, get more. Where there's a deficit of infrastructure, that's where infrastructure spending should take place, not where it's already built. And I think that was the logic behind participatory budgeting, making democracy work locally. The actors and motivations are political and social actors with different motivations promoting and participating in the budgeting process. To be frank, motivations range from wanting to have own street paved to create a deliberate public sphere. But self-interested behavior and community-building behavior that creates solidarity, can find rewards in participatory budgeting. The key actors include local governments, individual citizens, civil society organizations, non-governmental, and the business community. So it's not exclusively a civically run initiative. The conditions conducive for participatory budgeting: strong local executive support. It can't happen without the local executive opening the sphere. It is not an opposition. It's a complement to governance. Civil society willing to learn and able to contribute to ongoing policy debates. You need a generally supportive political environment, not only at the executive level, but within the local legislatures. And very important, and to be frank, you need financial resources to fund the projects that come out of this process. You need to be able to show results. Two complementary approaches have been basically the structure of the work in Porto Alegre. One is participatory budgeting for public works, specific items that need to be funded. And the second is the discussion on the themes and sectors that need to be prioritized. And there's a tension between the two, and in Porto Alegre it's reconciled in a very interesting way through formulas. This is indeed the last mechanism to define public expenditure, and they do it with a formula in the case of Porto Alegre that includes the priorities of sectors and the priorities of individuals for specific works. The strong local executive support is essential. The political leadership tends to include political entrepreneurs willing to experiment with a new institutional format. As in the case of the urban planning institutes I mentioned, the local officials need to be confident enough to take a chance, to open up space for dialogue. Let me give you a small anecdote that I think is very, very telling and very powerful. A mayor in Mexico, after taking one of our courses, and a very sophisticated gentleman who had been mayor in another local government, took our course, and he was the mayor of the richest municipality in Mexico. And then he went to be mayor of one of the poorest. He needed to learn how to manage scarcity, which is the art of governance. And one of the slides that we had in the course was trust builds patience, which is what he needed. He needed his constituency to believe in him, to make the right decisions, and for them to wait in line, to queue up for their services. He ended up using that headline of that PowerPoint presentation as a campaign slogan, and he won. And he used that for the next 3 years to build annual budgets that recognize the needs of individuals and also the needs of individuals to wait their turn patiently for the right decision, which I think was a very, very telling and powerful transformation for governance in Mexico. Let me talk a little bit about the basic tenets of participatory budgeting and how it's structured in Porto Alegre. The municipality is divided into regions to facilitate the meetings and the distribution of resources. In Porto Alegre, there are 17 regions. Government-sponsored meetings are held throughout the year, not just at one point. It is a process, not a product. The budget is not a document. It's a living process that engages individuals throughout the year. And it culminates in a product, but the process is more important than the product. And it is, in fact, a quantitative product. There's a quality of life index that is developed to define, basically, who should get more, how progressive public expenditures should be. And they agree upon this formula, and this is the basic evidence-based approach to allocating scarce resources. Public deliberations take place throughout the year. It's a very interesting phenomenon that they undertake. It's a fairly large city, 1.5 million, and they take residents from one part of the city to another so that they can understand the city as a whole and not just have a very provincial, narrow focus of their needs at the neighborhood level. They need to see other neighborhoods that are in fact poorer than theirs. And I think that is a very important aspect of this process. They have bus caravans. They take their citizens so they know their city. Another thing that I don't mention there is that it's a very gender-sensitive process. Women understand, the heads of households understand the imperative of having quality of life, of health, and of an education. So they're active participants in the process. And a very interesting aspect is that they have childcare in every meeting, be it a small meeting or a very large meeting. to ensure that the women who may not be able to attend participate actively. And it's a very magical and active experience. I've been to many of their meetings. Let me go to the next slide, and then we'll talk about some of the limitations, because not everything is perfect. After the final approval of the annual budget, there's two delegates per region, and this budget is sent to the mayor and to the local legislature. So it is the citizens are advising the legislature and the mayor, and in a very compelling way, because it has gone through a process, so it's not normative. And then the local legislature approves it. So it's a very compelling conversation between citizens and government, which I think results in a very good process. There's a lot of education that takes place, and citizens they learn about the importance of sequencing public works. You can't ask for paving a road before you have drainage. So if you want a road paved, you have to understand that you have to have drainage first. And I think that's a very, very important type of logic that needs to go into the citizens who, in fact, become very aware of the technical attributes of public expenditure. Let me go a little bit to the limitations. And the basic question is, are citizens gaining the knowledge necessary to become full-fledged policy advocates in their participation, or is it used to legitimize policy choices that the government already has? And this is a question that is valid. Another very important question is the role of long-term planning. Poorly designed participatory budgeting participants are interested in securing short to medium, but principally short-term public works. And so if it's designed poorly, you become putting out fires rather than planning. And the process, I think, is, it doesn't imply the whole budget. It's a small part of the budget, so it's not going to derail the large public investments, and that's another important attribute. It doesn't look at the whole budget. It started very, very small. It's grown progressively to about 20% of the whole public expenditures, but it started with less than 1%. So as the system progressed, it grew in confidence and including more. But let me end in a positive note. The benefits and policy implications. Well-designed and implemented, participatory budgeting can increase public learning and promote active citizenship, promote social justice. It spurs administrative reform. It generates trust, as I told in my short anecdote. It builds patience, and in some cases, it also builds revenues, because people are willing to pay when they see results. I think we have been professionally taught to be very careful about recommending things, but I'm not. I believe in this. I think this is a very powerful idea. Well implemented, in aggregate, in most countries, it is a silver bullet. It does work. And it's in aggregate. In some local governments, it may not work, but in aggregate, as a society, it works. A few years ago, in a meeting that we had in Chile, I was asked a very interesting question, and I'll end with this story. They asked us, does it work? Is it sustainable? What is the risk that a local government takes in implementing this? And we did some research, and we found out that in Brazil, 70% of the participatory budgeting processes last at least 3 administrations and a political change. There are robust mechanisms that are able to withstand public scrutiny, and they allow the citizens to continue. So if we were to talk to a mayor or a community, they have a 70% chance of getting it right. And if you get it right, there are very important benefits. So thank you very much.